All right. So we are going to dive into what we call messenger mastery this evening. We're going to talk about, well, I had mentioned a few things in the post, right? Some of the main keys are going to be skills versus systems. We are going to talk about, frameworks and things like that we are going to dive into as well. And we are going to talk about the actual conversation, the flow of, how to handle the conversation in Messenger. So those are going to be the main aspects, and I'm going to break that down. I'm going to screen share and go over the document, and we're going to really hit all of those topics. Kevin will be here also to moderate. If you guys have any questions, he'll relay that back to me, or if there's any within the Zoom room here, I can see those myself. But Kevin's going to let me know if you guys have any questions there on Facebook, and we can do a Q&A. We can either do it at the end, depending on the questions, or stop when we cover that area of today's curriculum. But let's just dive right into it. So I'm going to screen share, and we're going to go through a few different things. First of all, today is kind of the overview for today and what we're going to dive into first and foremost. And what I think is the most important aspect of this is systems versus skills, right? So the most crucial aspect and kind of the X factor here is the strategy you're using. What does that mean? So when we talk about the strategy, first, you have to think of the objective of the conversation. So when we're talking about strategy, and we're going to use Messenger in particular, I'm going to talk about Facebook Messenger. It doesn't really make much of a difference. People are going to ask, like, does it matter if I, prospect on Instagram or LinkedIn? They all have instant messenger, and they are all going to be similar in one way or another. So I'm going to talk more in regards to Facebook Messenger, but none of that's going to really change. Now, there are some differences, right? Platform to platform. LinkedIn is a little more business to business oriented for one. And, what I've seen in particular is you could be a little more straightforward. A lot of messages I get in LinkedIn are like offer based right from the get go. You can do that. I still don't know the effectiveness, and I'm not a big fan of it. And very rarely do I ever reply back or opt into one of those. So that's one of the first things you want to think about. One of the first real skills that you want to think about that you can ultimately systemize. Most of these things you can, and I'm going to cover some of the differences today. But one of the things you're really going to get down for skill set is think about it from the other end of the conversation. If you were the one receiving the message and not sending it, would you reply? Would it engage you? Would it get you to give a response that you're actually looking for when you send this out? So you want to judge some of those. One of the big things I've done is, even in Messenger, in conversations, I'll type a message out or, speak it out, whatever I'm doing. Doesn't matter if you're using talk, or unless you're sending voice notes, we'll talk about that differently. I more was talking about talk to text, but whatever. I'll type out a message, and then before I hit send, I'll read it back and say, how would I reply? Would I reply? And there's very many times until I, got it really down and had a lot of reps that I would delete that, or, reword it or change it. The first thing I really think about when it comes to my strategy and the objective is when we get into Messenger and we get in these conversations, and ultimately we're doing it to try to book a call appointment. That's what we're talking about here. This is for prospecting, for B2C offers in general, but this works for both. It doesn't really matter. This isn't necessarily a B2C versus B2B masterclass, because Messenger is still Messenger. And a lot of these outlined strategies, overviews, approaches are not going to change based on a B2C versus B2B offer. So I just want to clarify that a little. But again, one of the first things, you want to be very relational and think, would I reply to that? How would I reply? If somebody would just reply with like a yes or no, that's not very good for me, because I always think, this is my first thought process with the objective that I was just talking about, and I got a little sidetracked. But I want to put something, a question of substance to get a reply of purpose, right? Let me say that again. A question of substance to get a reply of purpose. So when I get to the point of the messenger convo, when I'm really getting, and we're going to talk about, the whole flow and the initial outreach, but now I'm talking about strategy. And what we really want to think about is, when we're talking strategy, like, what's the real assessment part of our conversation? How are we gathering the data we need? And then how are we keeping them engaged with a solution? How are we offering them something that's perhaps an unexpected solution so we can stand out, right? Instead of just be like, hey, I can teach you how to run Facebook ads to get more clients. Like, that's not an unexpected solution. Everybody can say that. So there's a few aspects to this, right? And when we get to the assessment phase, when I say ask something of substance to get a response, elicit a response of purpose, one of the things I'm thinking is I don't want one word answers, because what's that going to do? That's going to, like, any momentum I might have had in the conversation, that just brings it all back down to yes or no. And then I have to basically start the flow of the conversation almost from scratch again. That's something we don't want to run into. So the way I really combat that is to ask two-part questions. That's very good. So like when we get to the assessment phase, one of my favorite questions, and I've used quite often with perhaps people watching this, definitely people I've spoke with in the past and will continue in the future, like, what do you offer and how is it priced, right? That's not just going to get me, I'm a business coach, right, as a reply, or I'm a fitness coach. It's not going to get me a simple one-word answer. It's going to be like, hey, I'm a business coach. I've been in business about 2 years. Currently, I'm charging $2,500 for my 12-week program, right? That gets me a reply of purpose. That's data I can now use to understand more about this guy's offer. If it's my ideal client, is he undercharging? Like, I can get a lot of data and make a lot of suggestions based off of these answers. That's what the whole, point of Messenger is. We want to be somewhat pre-qualifying people. More importantly, this all is about solving problems, right? So we want to be authentic. We want to come from a place of service, genuine, but we want to be able to solve their problems. So if these answers are getting data that doesn't necessarily fit into your offer, you might not want to waste your time getting on a phone call. You might want to give a reference. Just be ethical and responsible about how you're handling this. And, it's going to rub off on the prospect, and they're going to realize that. More about strategy, right? When we're thinking about strategies, there's going to be more to that assessment phase. And what we're always really looking for now, it's not going to be worded like this often, if ever, but the basic three things we're looking for is where are they at now, where are they trying to get to, and what's the biggest challenge with them getting there, right? So I'm going to ask that, but I'm not going to ask it just like that, because that's like you're being interviewed, and that's not relational. It's not necessarily coming from a place of service. It could be, it kind of is, but they're not going to see it that way. Now, when I word something the way I just did a minute ago, what do you offer and how's it's priced? That's not my outreach, right? I've already built up a little rapport with this person, and we'll get to that. I wouldn't say it's really going backwards. I'm focusing on the most important aspects, and then we'll tie it all together by the time, the live stream is done today. But again, strategy, it comes down to objective. That's what you want to look at. And how do I get there? I just hit on some of those. You be relational, authentic, solve problems, come from a place of service, gather information and gather it right. Questions of substance to elicit replies of purpose, right? Or vice versa, however I worded it, doesn't really matter. Same difference. The other thing we're kind of doing when we're in messengers, we're still building authority, right? When we're offering suggestions to these problems, we're going to talk about it a little, and that gets into this objective in the strategy is knowledge gaps and where those tie in. And they're a big part of what we do with all of our private clients, right? We help them gather knowledge gaps that they didn't know existed, which is exactly what it sounds like. If you haven't seen any of our trainings, we have other trainings and modules just on knowledge gaps. Go back and watch that, but it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a gap in their knowledge that we show them with our expertise or our system or our methods or our program that solves their problem, that brings them a desired result, that solves a pain point, that helps them achieve a goal, right? So when we come in with these knowledge gaps, what it does, and we're going to talk about this a little more, is it kind of causes a zap in the brain. They're like, for a minute they think about it and they're like, oh, that would work. No one's ever said that to me before. Now they automatically want to know more. It's just the way that the human brain is wired, and human psychology. It's like when somebody tells you something new, you think about it for a minute. And if it was so far-fetched and new that you didn't think it would work, sure, you probably wouldn't want to be inclined to know more. But if somebody tells you something that no one's ever told you before, you think about it for a minute and you're like, oh, that might work. Heck, that probably would work. Your next thing is you want to know more about it, right? So when we can build authority, when we can give unexpected solutions, we're really engaging the prospect's brain and making them be more engaged with the conversation. And ultimately they want to know what the solution is. Now, we haven't yet broken out the solution. We're kind of teasing, right? And we'll get into that. So when it comes to strategy, another thing you want to think about is CTAs. So we're talking about in this call, like how to get somebody to book an appointment. That's ultimately the CTA. But first off, I want to say you should have multiple. You should have different CTAs that you can offer to prospects. We'll talk about those a little. And what you're going to find is you should really have like two go-tos, and your number one should always be booking. That's our goal, right? Is to book them on a call. But maybe a fallback CTA, somebody you could tell they don't quite trust you yet, or they need to see some more of your content, or they're not going to buy the first time you speak to them. A lot of people won't, right? So you want to build up more trust, more likability, more rapport, more authority. How are you going to do that? Well, maybe you have a Facebook group or a community where you deliver lots of value with your lives. You have lots of cool resources. You have great content in there, right? So maybe my call to action at the end of the conversation would be, hey, Mr. Prospect, I have this really great Facebook group that I think you would help you with a couple of the problems you said you had here. And I go live every week with these really powerful trainings where I don't hold anything back, right? Great free information you can implement right now to get some of those results you're looking for. So if you'd like, I'd be happy to drop the link. It's a totally free community and we'd love to have you in there. So that could be your call to action. And then you're going to nurture them. And as we teach to our private clients and in our programs, how to monetize your Facebook groups and how to go about building the right community there. I'm not going to dive too much into that, but I'm just saying that's a good secondary call to action, because some people won't be ready to book a call right away, or you feel like you're kind of strong arming them or forcing them. Like that's not what you want. You want to be doing what's in their best interest. And sometimes you can just feel out in these conversations, it's probably in this guy's best interest to get to know me a little more, get to know what I'm talking about. He probably has to warm up and see some of my content, which is fine, right? So you have a private community where you can do that, where you can kind of warm prospects up and get them to the point where they're ready to ultimately buy and work with you. And last thing that really goes into the strategy, this dives back into more what I talked about last week with your offer, but you have to still think about that big problem. What's the big problem you're solving? It should be very similar, but it can vary depending on the prospect's challenge, right? We said where they're at, where they want to be, and what's that biggest challenge. So, we want to offer that big problem. I mean, that big solution to a big problem, right? And why do I say it could be more than one? Because within your program, you should have a couple core aspects of deliverables that help you, get the client the result we're looking for. So this could vary, right? With one client, you might want to speak a lot about how knowledge gaps will really help them. But maybe my next client, it'll be more about learning sales processes and micro commitments, and how to visually sell will be the biggest needle mover. Like there's different aspects of my program, which I may speak to one prospect about this one and one prospect about this one, depending on their big pain point, their big challenge, the big gap. That's where we dive back into the knowledge gap. Those knowledge gaps are going to vary. They're not going to be the same for all prospects. Prospects are going to have different, sophistication levels, different levels of already being established in their business. Are they new? Are they doing 5K months? Are they getting very inconsistent months? 5K, 10K, 6K, 15K, right? So that guy has a different problem than the guy with no sales yet that's just launched. So you get all these factors come into play with that. Let's dive into letter B here under skills and systems, and really, how to, or what skills do I really need to comprehend to be effective in Messenger? That's a really good question and a really good topic for me to explain and elaborate on, because what skills are really needed initially, anyhow, to be really effective in Messenger is confidence. So as much as that sounds backwards, right? Like, how will I have confidence before I do it? It's not necessarily confidence in the messenger process. It's more confidence that you can deliver the result. Now, if you're confident you can help these people, it's going to come a long way in the way you speak, in the way you message. Again, whether that be, you know, whether that be you talking to them in a lengthy conversation, you sending voice notes, you sending them over to a landing page or an authority page, which we can also talk about a little if we have time to dive back to that. But the main point here is when you have confidence you can deliver results, it becomes easier for you to be comfortable asking those assessment questions, and ultimately to inject the proper solution. And what we would like to do, and we'll talk about this more, and I already touched on it, is inject an unexpected solution, something they didn't necessarily think. And we'll go through the framework of how to do that. Some of the other concepts, and skills you really need to know and understand to be effective in Messenger. Again, be very relational, genuine. Think about how you would want to be talked to. Those are big things that people don't do. What's happening, and what I'm seeing a lot in the marketplace now is people being taught from another coaching program or another course. Hey, this is the outreach. Just copy and paste this template, send it out to 100 people a day. By law of averages, 50 will see it, 20 will reply, 15 will be interested, 6 will get in your convos, 3 will book calls, you'll close one, bam, there's your 5K sale. Like, they do this all by a law of averages. And it starts with sending out 100 scripted, templated, almost carbon copy messages. Maybe they're changing up a little, maybe they're not in some cases. Point being, nothing's very custom to each prospect. Each prospect is going to be different, right? So what we talk about here at PDocs and what we do when we work with clients, and even assessing them when they're still prospects before they're clients, is like custom to them. Where are they at? Where are they at in their process? What are they really struggling with? Back to the 3 key points, right? Where are they at? Where are they trying to get to? And what's the roadblock? And that's going to help me best diagnose a solution for them, and inject a solution to their problem that is ultimately going to provide them with the value they need to see that as we get further into the conversation, or maybe this doesn't happen until the sales call, but to see that you are a good fit for them to invest with to ultimately solve this problem. A lot of our offers based on our clients, our prospects, our audience, are return on investment offers. So those are very easy to present in an investment perspective to your prospects, more as opposed to an expense. Big difference, and I talked about that a little in the offer creation, is through our conversation, and this applies to Messenger, which is why I'm bringing it up, and how you position your offer can very often lead to, are they seeing this as an investment or an expense? Because an expense all of a sudden becomes way harder to sell, way more objections, as opposed to an investment. So a lot of that comes into positioning. Other skills and concepts you need to have for Messenger is, this comes back to the ethics that we talk about when we talk about ethical sales and some of the live streams we've done there. That kind of highly ties back into what I'm talking about here. It's how ethical are you in the conversation, and can you disassociate yourself from the outcome? If you can do that, you can become a lot more effective. What does that mean in essence, Ray? Disassociate, like, whether this guy books or not, you need to disassociate yourself from that. And all you need to try to do is try to help them in the most genuine, most, responsible, respectful way possible. And if that's not your offer, or if that's not booking a call with you today, then don't do it. But don't feel bad because you didn't book a call. You did the right thing. You might have referred them to someone else. The guy might not be ready for a call yet. Maybe you had to send him some trainings, get him warmed up. And then a week later, he watches it. He comes back. He says, that was phenomenal, Ray. Can we now book a call? Now I understand where you're coming from, what you do. And I think I could use your services, your help. So, a lot of it really boils down to that. And again, I think it's super noticeable. I know when I get in Messenger conversations with people, I can tell when somebody doesn't care and they're just trying for a sale, and they're pressing, and it's so like off-putting being on the other side of that. You know what I mean? As opposed to somebody that's like genuinely asking questions to help, wants to know where I'm at. And then, even when they tell you their struggles or what they're challenging with, like when you can relate to that, a lot of my replies, and one of the things I've always told my clients is I generally reply with like a positive affirmation, a positive comment. And I'll give you an example, right? So let's say my question is, let's say I ask them their revenue and they're currently at 5K months. Okay. Then my next question, back to, ask something with a certain substance, right? Or with a certain purpose to get a reply of substance. Another one would be like, okay, so you're at 5K months, Mr. Client, and where are you trying to get to, right? So you're at 5K now, where are you trying to get to? And what's your biggest challenge in getting there? So I know where they're at revenue wise. Now I'm asking from a place of service, right? Like, where are you trying to get to? And what's your biggest challenge in getting there? Because just asking them where they're trying to get to could get me a one-word answer, 10K, 15K. And then the momentum of the kind of convo is gone and I got to start it all over again. But where are you trying to get to and what's your biggest challenge with getting there? I'm going to get an answer that's going to give me some substance to it. Hey, Ray, I'm trying to get to 15K months. I would say my biggest challenge has been lead gen. I just don't have quality or enough leads. Never mind the quality. The quality is decent, but I can't book enough calls. I don't have enough appointments coming in. So even if I'm closing at 30 or 40%, which is expected and decent for me, I'm still not going to get enough clients every month to hit my 15K goal. Okay. So like now I can come in with an unexpected solution. Okay, I understand where you're coming from, and I totally relate. So hey man, congrats on already being at 5K a month. Sounds like you're doing an excellent job building a little side hustle while you're trying to get this off the ground full time. I also one time struggled with lead gen, and you know what really helped me get over it? And then bam, you can inject your solution, whatever it is you do. Facebook ads, SEO. You want to make it stand out and have a better twist to it. And we'll talk about that when we get more into the frameworks of how to do that in number 2 down there, frameworks, right? We'll get into that a little more. But my main point there is, my reply to him gave a positive affirmation. Great, you're at 5K. That sounds like, you've already validated this offer. You've shown there's some interest. That's cool. And I can relate with your struggle. I've been there in the past, and this is kind of how I overcame it. Does that make sense to you? And they'll be like, yeah, man, that makes total sense. And then again, through this conversation, you're building a rapport, and now they're like, okay, well, he was at the same problem as me, and he did that to overcome it. So he's already figured out and overcome it. When they see that whatever they're trying to accomplish, you've already done it, successfully overcome that problem, and got to the goal or the desire on the other side of it. Well, now that's building up your authority more, and they're more likely to work with you because, hey, Ray has already overcome what I've struggled with, succeeded on the other side, and actually excelled, and he's even past that point now. So maybe even the next roadblock I get stuck with, he's already faced and can help me with as well, right? So it's doing all of that. Those are some of the key concepts and skills to comprehend. The more inclusive one that I'm not going to go super in depth, but what these conversations ultimately come down to is human psychology. So the more familiar you are with that, the more books you read on that, and the more you understand that, it totally correlates. I'm a big kind of nerd when it comes to human psychology, and I can't tell you how many books I've read that ultimately helped me in Messenger. Not that the book of human psychology had anything to do with Messenger directly, but they correlated so closely. And human psychology and how people reply, and how they feel and how engaging they are and how their morale is in the convo, that stuff's not going to change. Of course, there's going to be outliers, but generally speaking, there are philosophies and structures and theories that certainly are very, very effective. So, that would be the last thing I would say to when it comes to skills and concepts. The last thing I would say is the more familiar you can get with human psychology, the better you're going to be in Messenger. So how do we learn how to delegate and outsource? Like once I get good at Messenger, once I get, comfortable, I know I can start Messenger every day. I have a system, my convos, I'm not getting ghosted. I'm getting replies, I'm booking calls. But now I want to grow this or take myself out of that part of the business because it's just getting tiring. And now it's working and I'm getting more clients. So I have a lot of time in sales and fulfillment now, and I don't really have a lot of time for prospecting. This is going to lead directly into number 2, which is why it was the last one in number 1, right? But the way you can start to delegate and outsource is you can make frameworks, and we're going to dive through some of those cool frameworks and resources we use internally, and I'm going to let you see some of them here shortly. But what we're going to really do is we'll dive into what you would kind of learn next is our eco framework, right? So this is our eco framework. The eco framework is proven, insanely systematic booking framework we use every single day. We see brand new appointment setters turn into booking beasts, right? Landing 6 to 8 appointments per day organically. Again, everything we're talking about is organic, so this is all free. We have all kinds of methods for how we do paid traffic and paid revenue, paid leads. We're not necessarily talking about that for today's presentation. So what does ECO stand for? It stands for engage, assess, assign, call to action, and obligation. And let's break each one of these down because this is kind of going to lead into the resource I'm going to show you next. But if you didn't understand the foundation, I don't know how much you would be able to go actually implement. And that's what we're here for. I don't want to just teach you stuff like here's our framework, but if you don't understand the foundational stuff, you can never go implement. It's kind of counterproductive and a tease to you guys. So let's make sure you can understand the foundational stuff, right? Engage the croc brain. There are 2 methods we use to properly engage and acknowledge prospects' pains, enough where they'll allow us to begin assessing, right? So we'll dive more into these. Assess the situation. Once you've engaged, right, the prospect, their walls come down a bit and you can begin to get into the assessment phase. Again, where they are, where they want to be, and what's stopping them. Main 3 things I've been talking about this whole call. We just don't want to word it like that. We want to word it, again, in ways that are going to elicit replies of substance. We want to word it in ways that are authentic, relational, and still coming from a place of service. Like I'm not interrogating you. I'm asking this so I can, give you the best resource, the best insight, the best advice, the best free training, whatever. But if I don't assess this right, how can I give you the best feedback and insight and advice you're looking for to ultimately achieve X desire or solve X problem, whatever it is. Next, we dive into assign the frame. Once you know what's holding the prospect back, you can assign a brand new frame. When this is done right, the prospect will become what's called problem aware. So many times these prospects aren't problem aware necessarily. They might think they are, but we're going to show them the unexpected solution, which is actually a little bit of a different problem than they were thinking. So it's like what they think the problem is. No, here's the real problem. And then we can inject our solution, which is in essence the knowledge gap that I talked about a little earlier, and we have all kinds of different trainings on. Next, we're going to talk about their call to action, or this is one of the micro commitments in our micro commitment process. Again, you got to revert back to old trainings, or or maybe you're familiar with our micro commitment process. I hope so, because it makes a world of difference in framing. Ultimately, our sales process, the amount of prospects we close, makes a whole difference in our whole business model, to be honest. By now, you want to create a call to action. This should be a triage call, like we said, if you feel they're ready. Also, you could book them in for a strategy session. Now, we write that here. I'm not going to recommend that. I always recommend going to a triage call first. Even more so once you start to grow and have sales reps, because you don't want to fill your sales reps' calendars with BS appointments that aren't pre-qualified right. And I don't even know why you would want to do that for yourself, other than being brand new and just wanting to get reps in. Yes, I could see that, but it's not going to help you build the right skill set or confidence when you're having calls with the wrong people, just because I wanted to book them straight to a strategy session. So I highly recommend going to a triage call first, an assessment call, roughly 15 minutes, give or take, generally speaking. We have all kinds of trainings and overviews on how to do that and how to do that well. A lot of times a triage call is going to repeat what we're going through in this messenger process and how we assess it. We're just going to get more clarity and dive a bit deeper and build up more rapport face-to-face in person on a Zoom call than we can in Messenger, right? And then the obligation. Very often, this is the homework you're assigning. You want them to prepare for the call. So now that you've got them booked, you want to give them homework in the form of, you could have what we call an authority page. And guys, just comment down below authority page if you want to see our example or you haven't yet. Yosh or Kevin will get that sent over to you just so you can review one. But that's a great thing to use as a homework. An authority page that gives them a little overview of what you do, who you help, but then it has all kinds of, case studies. If you don't have case studies, it could have other things in there. And I gave some examples in a post today in the Facebook group by one of our members. Your homework could also be, let's say you're a fitness coach, right? It could be the outline to your program and how people see results within 90 days, how they lose 20 pounds, how they lose 4 inches off their waist, whatever it is your big transformation is. Your homework could be, one of your most prevalent requested things by existing clients. They could have real struggle with, lead gen, with Facebook posts, whatever it is that you see as a common problem for your ideal clients will also be a problem for your prospects. So once you're aware it's a problem and you've been asked to, hey man, can you make a training on this? And you get asked to over and over again. Well, not only does your target, your existing clients want it, but so will your target audience of prospects that you've not yet worked with. So you create a training on those topics. And when you get into this point in the process, hey, Mr. Prospect, I'd love to send you over my training on overcoming sales objections. It sounds like you're really getting stuck there, and this will probably be the most helpful. So why don't you review that training? And then when you hop on the call with our advisor, Danny, on Friday at 4, you guys could really hit the ground running. You can ask him, any questions you might have had from that training, and feel free to share any takeaways or anything, you picked up from there, right? So this is building more authority, delivering more value, and, helping your sales rep. Now that they hit the ground running with that call, they already have questions lined up. They understand more about what you do, and your sales rep can go through a little less of the informative part of that call and get more into the personal custom part that he needs to dive into to ultimately, help that prospect and get him enrolled in the program if that's, the right fit. So yeah, pre-frame materials, additional content. There's all kinds of examples. I mean, I could go over that forever. I'm not going to. I think I gave enough detail there. But that's the overall outline of what the eco framework is. And then we'll talk a little more about how we use it into Messenger. But we really want to start with listing these three things. So I'll just read through it, the prep work. Before getting started, we go do some prep work, create a toolkit of sorts and phrases that you can pull from to use with ease. This allows you to move faster and not stumble around, right? So first, we're looking at the real problem. So this is why your prospect hasn't already seen results. So again, they could think that their real problem is not enough leads, and I tried Facebook ads, but that didn't really assess the problem. And you could come in with your knowledge gap, right? Saying, well, after talking to you a little more, do you mind if I weigh in on this? And they'll say, yeah, sure, Ray, go ahead, weigh in on that. Well, do you ever think the real problem is you're severely undercharging? You said you're charging $500 for your program when the market is charging about $2,500. So maybe the problem isn't that you need, more leads and Facebook ads to solve that. But if you were charging 5x what you're already charging, and I could show you how to package up your offer where you're going to get interest and ultimately be able to make sales at that, you're not going to need to increase your lead flow, because with the same amount of clients you're working with now, you would already be hitting your revenue goals. And they'll be like, oh, shoot, but what if I could show you how to craft an irresistible offer where you could charge 5x and go out and make sales the same week? Do you think that would help assess your problem? And then they're like, oh, shoot, I never even thought about that. Like, maybe I don't need Facebook ads. Maybe I don't need to spend money on advertising and more leads. Maybe I'm just severely undercharging. And then, you're going to get them, hey, would you like to know more about how I can help you with that? Also, you dive into the angst next. What's the cost of doing nothing if they don't solve the real problem? So there's a couple ways you can go about that. But like in Messenger, once you've assessed it and they had that little zap in their brain that we talked about, right? Like, unexpected solution. Oh, shoot, that will probably work. And like, now I want to find out more. Well, what you can say there is like, hey, where I usually see my clients go wrong is they think they need to increase lead flow, and ultimately they're putting money, time, and resources into that when they can really be working with more of their existing clients and kind of rehoning their offer to deliver optimal results to their clients while charging more. So you're showing them where people normally go wrong, and they're like, shoot, I'm already doing that. Like, that's where I go wrong too. Again, you're building up more authority, and now it's just making more sense to them. So we really want to go over that real problem. Show them that the real problem might not be, and then knowledge gap, we can kind of inject our unexpected solution, and then we build up a little angst, which could also be looked at as urgency, building up a little bit of urgency. If you don't get this problem solved now and ultimately get your business from that 5 to 15K, where would you be in 6 months if we never got this solved? Oh, I would probably still be working my day job and not be able to, transition my coaching business to the full-time thing that I would love to. And ultimately, I might end up quitting if I don't, get this fixed in 6 months. So like, what's the cost of not taking action? It could be not even having your business 6 months down the road. So there's different ways you can go about framing that. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff because I have a few other resources. I just wanted to give you the overall outline. Now what I'm going to go into is kind of the resources that we use. So hold on a minute. Let me just stop share for a second. And instead, I need to bring up, bear with me 1 second. Yep, that's the one. When you have 17 tabs open, it gets confusing. But now I'm going to show you the eco framework that we just went over. Now I'm going to show you it and how we build out a way where we can ultimately replicate, duplicate, delegate, and outsource this stuff. So this is still loading because there's so much information on this page. But here's an eco board, and I'm going to go through these steps and kind of show you what we do and the real process. Now, this isn't all Messenger the way this is showing, but the eco framework is still certainly applicable in Messenger, and I will do my best to clarify the differences there. Cool. So what I want to dive into. So first here in the engage section of this, a lot of times this is coming in transitional messaging in comments, which we ultimately want to take to a DM, right? So we're not covering too much of this, but this is based off of, let's create a post, whether it's in my own Facebook group, my own page, in other Facebook groups where my ideal client hangs out, or a place where my audience is, and I'm trying to create engagement. So we create a post, right? And then that post is getting, let's say, 17 likes and 21 comments. Well, we want to reply back to those comments and utilize transitional messaging. At that point, within some of the transitional messaging, right, that's where we can be doing a little bit of assessing, give them a quick knowledge gap, a quick, zap of the brain of, hey man, did you ever think that's not the problem, but it could could be this. And they're like, hey man, you're right. And they'll be like, cool, do you mind if I shoot you a DM? I would love to give you a lot more info, but I really don't want to blow up this thread with 20 comments back and forth, right? Cool, man. Yeah, no problem. So then you shoot them a DM and you start the convo that way. And we're going to get into explaining that in a minute. But again, that's the kind of engaging part, is you're going to create engagement within a platform. I'm using Facebook for this example. Again, this doesn't really vary whether it's you're talking LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. The type of content, you know, and the audience and things like that could be different, and how you utilize groups is somewhat exclusive to Facebook. Now, you know, LinkedIn has some groups and there's things you could do there, but it's not quite the same as like the community feel you get with Facebook. So there's some differences, but point being, the initial phase is getting engagement. It doesn't really matter what platform. And then you're going to take that engagement and you're going to do outreach of a knowledge gap and ultimately direct them and get them into a DM, which is what I just said. I'm not going to get super into the examples there. But this is a way that we have made a framework out of it and replicated it. So it's like, hey, Joe, you asked me to shoot you a message. So this is based off the way I just said it, right? Like, hey, this is not your problem. You inject the knowledge gap. This is a real solution. Does that make sense? You mind if I shoot you a DM instead of blow this thread up? So then you could go right into this. Hey, man, you asked me to shoot you a message based out of the, you know, coaches to agency group. Here I am. So curious a little more about what you've tried so far. And then, you know, I always like to get permission before I really inject any of my diagnosis, if you will, diagnostic questions. Cool, man. I think I could probably help. Do you mind if I ask you a little more about that and get a little more info? You know, treat it like the discovery phase to find pain points. This next section is when we go into kind of assessing. And again, what are we always looking at? What does it say right there on the left where my mouse is, right? Where are you at now? Where do you want to be? And what's your biggest problem? What's stopping you? I keep repeating that, but this is where we really break down our knowledge gaps. Again, this call isn't necessarily about that, but just so you guys understand, if you haven't seen our trainings or don't understand knowledge gaps, it's like we build a tree based off of, we basically build a person A and a person B off your prospects. And let's say the number one question right here, we're going to ask like a qualifying question. And let's say for me, I want to know, let's say my first question is, hey man, and I'm working with primarily business owners as a business consultant and coach, right? Are you currently over or under 10K months? If they say yes, that would be person A, my ideal prospect, or person B, whatever. If they said no, that's person A. So person A might be a little more of a beginner, somebody I'm not quite ready, and they might be better fit for my downsells. Or maybe there's somebody I need to give some trainings and resources to get them up to the point where they're ready and more established enough to work with me. You know, maybe I have a $47 or a $97 front end product that's really going to help them get the initial results they need. And then they'll have some more confidence or make a sale or two and be more ready to be person B and jump into my high ticket program. So we're usually breaking our prospects out into person A and person B. And we're really crafting our messaging and our knowledge gaps to speak to our ideal audience. So with many of my prospects and clients, we don't even really fill this out to the left side for person A. Now, some do. If they want to work with both, they might have an offer that helps people launch a business, and they might have another offer for more established clients. Cool. So we have like an offer for both people. We'll work out the messaging. But a lot of times we want to focus more on our ideal client. So then we'll get down to our next question. Okay, great. You're doing over 10K months. Well, what's your offer look like, and how's that priced and packaged, right? That might be their next question. So now I want to find out, are they selling high ticket or not? And then based off of that, I'll have a person A and a person B. Like, no, I'm charging less than 2,500, I'm low ticket, or yes, I'm already charging 2,500, I'm high ticket. And as we go down here, we're going to ultimately, the yellow boxes are knowledge gaps. This is where, based off of their answers, we inject solutions that they're not yet expecting. What we do when we do this for a client, each one of these is custom and different, and they get a one-on-one call with one of our knowledge gap expert coaches. And if you guys want more information about that, just drop knowledge gap expert below, and we'll get you, on a call with somebody who could tell you if that's going to be a good fit for you, and how that will really help you. But this is definitely one of the most impactful points when it comes in this leading into Messenger, because these knowledge gaps help us now have new entry points into conversations, new solutions to offer that we didn't even know before we could offer. It's amazing how this exercise works. I've got on these calls with business owners from $0, zero sales, brand new offer, all the way up to business owners doing 500K a month in revenue prior to working with us. And we still found knowledge gaps and entry points into their market that they never knew. Out of all 150 calls plus I know we've done for these, it's only one client ever we didn't inject a new knowledge gap he's never seen. And it was a totally rare offer that is a one-off, and it is a one-off because it's literally one. But what we'll do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now within this knowledge gap map here, this little example, this guy has 6 new knowledge gaps or entry points into conversations he can now use. We usually circle one that we think is going to be most prevalent to his most prevalent prospect. As we're going down this run, we're going to know which person based off these yes and no answers and over and under 5K and high ticket or not, or am I closing over 20% of my calls or not? Based on those answers, we're going to know which knowledge gap is best for them, but we're also going to know which prospect we're best suited to help on this run of people. So it really helps us in a lot of areas. The most important aspect when it comes to Messenger would be the next phrase here, that this A is for the assign phase. So now we've assessed, now we're going to assign a frame. So basically this is our outline before we fill it out with the script that we would put in there. To ultimately, we're talking about now the resources we can use to delegate and outsource Messenger. What we really do is we fill these out in a manner that we could now give it to a VA down the road, and they could be doing our Messenger convos, the assessing, the assigning, especially when I'm going to still go back a little, when they understand the outreach process and how to get to this point of the conversation. But this is usually like, mind if I weigh in on this? And this works very well when coming from, something like a conversation in Facebook where you've injected a knowledge gap. They show interest. So you message them, hey, I reached out to you, based off your comment in XYZ group. You said you had this problem. Is that correct? Yeah, I totally have that problem. I've been struggling with this for 5 months. Cool, man. You mind if I weigh in on this? Get permission, right? No, not at all. I would love your insight. Cool. So I deal with this quite often. And it sounds to me like the reason you're having, and you would inject, this is the only thing that really changes in this script ever that your VA would have to plug in themselves, but it's really easy because it's custom to each prospect. So this guy's symptom level problem, right, was he thinks he was struggling with lead flow, and we kind of switched it and made him think he's really undercharging for his offer. But hey, did you ever think the reason you're having a problem with having enough leads is not really what the problem, but it's really this? So again, that's where you're kind of reiterating the point. If you didn't already mention it in that transitional messaging, but you shouldn't get too in depth there, right? You should inject a knowledge gap, get their interest, and then take the conversation into Messenger. Now here's where you can now go into depth about that, right? But the real problem is you're actually significantly undercharging for your offer. Knowledge gap. Well, when we work with our clients that have this problem, what we generally see them do is we increase their price 3x, and we show them why, because we create a valuable, irresistible offer that their market can't resist. And we build up enough value and enough likability and rapport based off the knowledge gaps we extract from our prospects and the solutions we can now offer to them, that they have no qualms about paying us high ticket pricing because we're solving a big enough problem for them, right? Angst, right? Well, where most of our clients go wrong in the past is they think they need more leads as well, but then they spend a lot of money and they run Facebook ads, and they're either not profitable because it's not their strength. They pay an agency to do so that they either don't see a return on investment, or the agency overpromised and underdelivered, or they get so many leads coming in that they can't even handle it. Like, sure, I have all these leads, but you don't have a process. You're not closing at a high rate. And now you have this, lead flow coming in when really that could just break your whole business if you don't have the infrastructure to handle it. So now you're kind of showing them like, shoot, maybe more leads isn't my problem. Maybe it is significantly undercharging. And it sounds like he's seen this before with his other clients, right? The last thing is you're always going to confirm. And it's usually simply just going to be like, hey, does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, man, it totally makes sense. Like, I've overlooked this and I've struggled with this, and what you're saying totally makes sense. I'd love to know some more. Great. Well, what I'm going to do is below, I'm going to include this great little training I've put together, which is going to help you overcome, understanding how to charge more for your offer, and overcoming your limitations on thinking you need to charge only $500 so your market can afford you, because that's simply not true. Also, within that assignment, Mr. Client or Mr. Prospect, right? I'll have a link to, to book a call with myself or someone on my team. If you would love to speak more and get a quick 15-minute strategy session or breakdown, a blueprint session with my team, and they can really show you how we can help you reach that goal, that's totally fine. But at first, I would really love you to just check out the training and message me back with your biggest takeaway from that, right? So that keeps them engaged. We're giving them something of value, and it's helping us build authority. And they're seeing your face, right? When you're making these trainings, you should be using like Vimeo or Loom or some kind of screen share software where they can see a resource. Maybe you're sharing a PDF or a slide presentation or, whatever. And then your face is in the corner. So they're hearing you, they're seeing you, you're building up more rapport and a relationship with this person. And if your CCO, your homework is very good and powerful in the way we teach our clients to construct them, then it should be offering a lot of value in solving a problem. So they're either going to get a good result off of that homework and be like, oh, cool, Ray just gave me this, I can go implement it and it's going to help me get to this goal. And then they're going to run into another problem down the road. And who are they going to come back to? The person that helped them last time, you. So even if you give them something of value that helps them overcome this right now, that's the big misconception I see with a lot of our prospects and newer clients. It's like, hey, Ray, am I giving away too much value, too much info? Like, personally, no, I don't think there's any such thing as too much info for free. Like, the information's probably out there. It's probably on somebody's podcast or YouTube channel or in somebody's $47 course. Even if somebody's got to open up their wallet, spend $50 for it. The information is generally out there. Why wouldn't you want to be the one giving it to them and giving it to them for free and showing them value and helping them achieve something? Because the next time they get stuck, they're just going to come back to you. You were very genuine, helpful, valuable last time. Why would they go ask somebody else? It's going to help you in the future. And it can be very clear homework assignment that gives them a full understanding, and that brings them to the understanding that, shoot, I do need to invest and work with a coach because I'm never going to figure this out for my own. I've already been trying for 5 months. And if I spin my wheels for another 5 months, I might not even be in business anymore. I might not even have the passion for this anymore. So your homework is going to, build up more value. And also, a lot of times it's going to give them the right mindset that they are closer to being ready to invest and work with you, or they are ready. Either one is a step in the right direction, right? So a lot of things that you can do once you build out scripts like this. And if you see, if I scroll over, oh, good, we don't have these all filled out because I don't want to give away our clients' scripts that are private clients, obviously. This is still our templates. But what our clients will do is, based off of each knowledge gap above, I think we said we had 6 with this one, they would go down and they would have a script for each knowledge gap, because that's going to be a different type of prospect. What do I mean by a different type of prospect? Different problem, different goal, different challenge. They could have a just different whole journey where they're at in their business journey, in their fitness journey. Doesn't matter what product, but it's basically a different prospect. I mean by how established they are, how sophisticated they are, how aware they are, the problem, again, the desire, all of those things. So these are different types of prospects that you can all help. And each one, there's going to be a little different knowledge gap, a little different solution. So you can fill out, a template in Messenger for each type of prospect. And once you understand this flow, you understand the human psychology behind it a little, and you see it working for yourself, well, very quickly you can replicate and delegate it once you see it working. The next phase of this, and also done in Messenger, or can be done in Messenger, sometimes you're going right from here and you're booking a call, but still you're going to do what's next is the C, which is the kind of call to action, right? Excuse me. So call to action. Basically, okay, I think I can help. Let's do this. Let's book the call first, but I want to send you the simple free training that shows you the answer to whatever they said their symptom level problem was, right? That could vary from prospect to prospect. Then on the call, I can really answer any questions for you and assign you some next action steps. Yeah, however you want to word that, right? You could just say, then on the call, we can just really hit the ground running. We'll make the most out of our time and it'll be the most productive for the both of us, right? Does that sound better for you? It also keeps them engaged and seeing more of your content. And these are good. This call to action is almost like touch point messages, like just to make sure. Let's say you spoke to them on a Friday, right? going into the weekend, you don't take calls on the weekend. You don't want to do business stuff or show your prospect like you're trying to rush it for a weekend appointment. So maybe you book into next week, Tuesday or Wednesday or something, due to his schedule on Monday, the weekend being there. Maybe on Monday or Tuesday, if the appointment was scheduled for Wednesday, I usually like to do these roughly 24 hours before my call is scheduled, give or take. Let's say 36 hours, because it could be 2 days, it could be 1 day, but let's say like a day and a half before, especially if I scheduled a few days out due to how busy they were, the weekend, whatever. I love to send what I call touch point messages, just kind of touching base with where they're at and keeping them warmed up to me and giving them some more content. If I sent them something on Friday and it was like a 15-minute thing and they were eager and they went through it right away, well, now it's like if I didn't schedule the call till Tuesday or Wednesday, it could be like 5 days before they even see or hear from me at all. So that touch point message and dropping some more value, some more content, another homework assignment, keeps them very engaged and more apt to show up on the call. You'll have a lot of no-shows if you book 5 days out and have no contact in between that. Then all of a sudden you'll go for your call Wednesday at 3 in the afternoon. All of a sudden you're sitting there on your Zoom link staring at your screen and you're the only one on it because they didn't show up. And you're like, shoot, I probably should have messaged this guy sometime in between. For me, I like to do touch points roughly 36 hours before. And again, 30 to 60 minutes before. Hey, Joe, you stoked for our call in an hour from now? Just want to make sure nothing came up and you're still available and, able to attend our appointment. Boom. Just something, again, to make them more apt to show up. The last aspect of this is the O, which is where am I drawing a blank? Call to action, obligation, duh. Obligation is basically, another word for accountability. That's what we call this, the accountability frame, right? This is talking more about what I was just talking about in the last one. That certainly carries over into the obligation, and more so. So 24 hours or several hours before you do a tie down, hey, did you have a chance to go through the resource? If so, what's your biggest takeaway? I always welcome any and all feedback. I love using that one because that's so true. I do love my client feedback, and that's the way to make my content, my trainings, my resources better. When they give me the feedback saying, hey man, that was great, I learned so much, but if you went into this too, that might have helped me even a little more, I would know, okay, I either need to remake that or make a separate one with this. And then you could send, if you haven't gone through it yet, please do so before our call. It will really help us be, help you be most prepared and get maximum value out of our chat together on Wednesday at 3, right? And then a 30-minute before the call tie down, like I said, 30 or 60, whatever. But hey, Joe, looking forward to our chat here in about 30 minutes. Speak soon, my friend. Again, just something to keep them engaged with you and more reason to show up if they see your message. And sometimes they might have totally forgot if they've scheduled 5 days out and they're like, oh, good, I'm glad he shot me that message. It's on my calendar, but I totally forgot. Now I'll be ready for it, right? Just gives them more chances to be prepared for it. So, I'm not gonna give access to this because this is a private client thing. I did want to go over it with you so you guys understood it. And I went over the foundational stuff in the background so you understood that as well, and it would make more sense to you. But I can't give that away for free because paid clients pay for that. So the other thing I didn't really mention there with how to delegate is like pros and cons of this. So one of the cons is, right, when you delegate to you might have a part-time, outreach employee that does it for you on a commission basis. You might have a virtual assistant. You might have a family friend, whoever's going to be doing your messaging. One of the problems is like, and this is something we work with private clients on, and it's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of tech reliant. Okay. It's like, how does somebody else use my profile and message, trying to be me? Or can I set up a system where somebody else is messaging on my behalf and they don't necessarily have to be utilizing my profile? There's some pros and cons to that. And I kind of have to work with clients with that on an individual basis to see what's best for them and how that would work best. And there are some challenges and hurdles to letting somebody else take over your profile and message on your behalf. So just things to think about, and something you would want to talk to somebody on our team about, or somebody else who's done this, and just at least go through the pros and cons, right? Just think about that. This is going a little lengthy, so I went a bit in depth. So I do want to get through everything. So if I speed along, Don't get mad at me, but I'm still going to go back and cover the few things that I talked about. And some of that's right in here. So again, I kind of want to recap the flow and what we didn't, the flow of the conversation I call is initial outreach through your call booking or your other CTA. We talked about, maybe sending them into your Facebook community. Your CTA could even be, a lead magnet. It could be your CCO. And within that, you have a link that leads to your call booking or that leads into your sales funnel and how they book, right? So there's all kinds of different options. But for this, let's just say initial outreach through the call booking we'll use for this. And really, B ties back into this, and this is what we're really going to go through and cover. The differences in approach versus cold and warm prospects. So what is the difference? First off, right? A cold prospect would be somebody you had no engagement with ever. Let's say they either sent you a friend request or you sent them one, and they just now got into your ecosystem. They're now friends with you. They can see your content. They're they're in your Facebook page. They're now a friend, or they follow, or whatever, depending on platform, right? And until you've had any interaction with them, it's still a cold prospect. Now, I would say maybe if they've been following you for 6 months, you haven't engaged, but they fully have seen your content, they understand what you're about, that would lean a little more toward warm. But I generally want to categorize warm as they've opted in through something, they've raised their hand through an ad, through a two-step, through a promotional post, something like that, and said, I want more information, I want it, right? That's warm. Or you've at least had engagement, right? They posted something, or let's just say you posted something in a group and they came back saying, hey man, yeah, I struggle with that, or I'm trying to achieve 10K months, or whatever your post is about, right? And then you comment back saying, oh, that's great. I'm glad you're trying to reach 10K months. I remember when I was trying to get there, was my first hurdle too. Where are you at now in the process, right? So the guy's like, oh, I'm at 3K months. Great to hear that you've already got past 10K months. What did you do to get there? Yeah, man, would love to help and give you some insight. Would you mind if I, shot you a DM instead of blow up this thread with 20 messages back and forth? LOL. Boom. So now you've had engagement and you take it to Messenger. So here's the difference, right? So that's a warm prospect now, and you're going to start that conversation totally different. The flow and the initial outreach would be, hey, Joe, we messaged each other in XYZ group. You said you wanted some more information on how I got to 10K months. Would you still like me to give you my insight, my thoughts on that? Yeah, Ray, I would love that. Great. Thanks for reaching out to me. I'm glad you did. And yeah, I would love your approach. So then now you can go into the next part of the conversation, and we'll get to that in a second. Versus cold outreach and what I teach and what we teach internally for organic outreach in more business to consumer based offers. Again, I don't think this varies much B2C or B2B, so I won't even make that that what's the word I'm looking for? That, differentiation. There we go. But cold outreach is more somebody that, like, let's say you sent out friend requests to 15 people and you targeted them, right? 15 people based on their job title or, what they do for a living, or could be their appearance. If you're a fitness coach and you added some people that are overweight and out of shape, whatever reason you added these people, right? Let's say you sent out 15 friend requests today. End of the day, let's say 8 of them accept, 7 are still sitting in limbo, either haven't seen it, didn't accept, or they accept the next day, maybe just because they delayed, whatever. So then the next morning or a day or two later, what I'll do is I'll wake up and I'll send out what I call a cold outreach message to those 8 new friends I have. It's cold outreach because they've only interacted with me because I sent them a request, they accepted, and maybe they've seen a little of my content, but in a day or two, it's doubtful. So I'm going to reach out with a cold message. My approach for cold outreach is I love to use voice notes. I found them much more effective, especially for the initial message. Now, I'm not saying the whole conversation has to be that way, and you can't teach and train off of voice notes necessarily, where you can off of typed messenger messages, because you can screenshot them and show your VA what you said and why you said it and why it worked, or you can get help from your coach, right? If you can screenshot your conversations. But I like that initial message on outreach to be a voice note from my cold outreach in particular. And I'm always keeping it all about them, right? What they're wondering is, like, why did Ray connect with me? Why did he send me a connection request, right? And why is he reaching out to me? So my initial message, I'm going to go look at their profile. I'm going to find something in common that I can talk about, whether that be their cover photo, their bio, right? Maybe they had something cool in there, what they do for a living. I might have to scroll down 3 posts and I see we're both into Boston Red Sox, for instance. Whatever the case may be, I'm going to find something that I relate with and that I can talk to and speak about that they are interested in. It's really nice if it's something commonly interested, which is what I'm trying to find. More importantly, it's something that you can tell is one of their interests, right? And I'm going to reach out and say, hey, Joe, I'm Ray here, and just sending you this voice note really to make your acquaintance and welcome you to my community. Okay, that one's a little weird. Let me start over again, because community would be like if I was sending them to a Facebook group, but they just joined my page. So, all right, Joe. Hey, my name's Ray. I'm just reaching out with you here because I really wanted to connect with you. I see a lot of people that connect on Facebook nowadays become friends, really never speak, and they're actually more like strangers. So I just wanted to drop a quick introduction. I saw in your profile you're really into muscle cars. It looks like you have a '67 Shelby GT in your driveway. That's awesome. I'm also into muscle cars. My dream car is a late '60s Nova, but I definitely love those, late '60s, early '70s muscle cars. So that's really cool. You're probably wondering why I reached out. What I saw is we just had some, common friends and some similar groups and interests. And I'm really always just looking to expand my network with other cool, like-minded individuals. So looking forward to seeing some of your content. And again, great to connect, Joe. Boom, and I'll cut it off. So I'll send out 8 of those morning to the 8 people that I just connected with the day or two prior that accepted my connection requests. And that's a great way to break the conversation and start it off, right? So your initial outreach, you get it. That was cold. We talked about warm, right? Warm, they're already saying, yeah, I want the information. So you're going to dive right in. And warm, you're going to go back into it. You probably didn't do it within the Facebook post and the 3 or 4 comments in the thread, right? That transitioned them into the DM. So now that they said, yeah, I want some insight, I'd be like, great, man. To give you the best insight applicable, do you mind if I ask you just a couple more questions about exactly what you do and who you help, so I can give you the best suggestion at the end of this? Yeah, man, totally. So that's when you're now going to dive into that assessment phase, right? And I'll go through this in another training, and you need to figure out those questions for yourself. But I can walk you through a script we have of the exact questions we have to book calls and to get that right data. I'm not going to have the time today, obviously, but that would be the next phase from that aspect. Now, from the cold message, what I get asked a lot is, okay, Ray, so I sent the outreach message, but like, how do I transition into what I do without being salesy and pitchy and grimy? And that's a very fair question. What I will say, though, is by that first outreach message, keeping it all about them. What I talked about with human nature is it's human nature for those people to ultimately come back asking you what you do, because you kept it all about them. You made a correlation to something that's one of their interests, and you also showed that you have a passion or a like for that. And you asked them a little more about what they do and who they help, right? So by doing all that, natural chain of reaction is 8 out of 10 people that reply to these are going to be like, hey, Ray, that was a really nice outreach message. Like, usually someone will send me a little text, but it was cool to like hear your voice. I can see you're excited about what you do. It seems like we have some stuff in common, and thanks for connecting with me. I really appreciate that. I'm kind of wondering a little more about what it is you do, Ray. Would love to hear a little about that. So a lot of times they're going to give you that chance to segue, because that initial message was all about them, was authentic, and was you. Do you have to get a little comfortable with it in a few reps? Sure. But I used to wake up and have fun with it. I was like, cool, I got 8 messages to send. Pick up my phone, look back over their profile, found something I liked. I'd be excited, upbeat, happy. That would come across in my voice inflections, which in turn would come across in the morale they would come back to me. They would think it's unique. It was all about them. It was authentic. It was genuine. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't one of these sleazy messages where I talked about my offer and what I do and how I can help them. I didn't do any of that. I don't want to get into how I can help them until I understand what their challenges are, where they're trying to get to, and if my program is the best fit for that. So again, if they start to ask me, like, even people ask me early on, like, hey, what do you do and who do you help? And like, how's your offer look? It's like, hey, man, this is a quick overview, but I don't want to get too into that because I don't even know if I could help you. Like, I'd love to know if I could help you before we ever talked about what I offer and how it's priced. Does that make sense? Like, why would I talk about my price with you before I even know if I can help you? And they're usually going to take that for what it's worth and be like, oh, totally. Yeah, let's get to that part and make sure we're a good fit before I do, ask you for your pricing and how your offer and your program looks, right? So again, that's kind of how the flow is going to go. I wanted to go back to this initial outreach because that does vary a little, right? From warm to cold, and how we're touching that. The other thing you want to consider is, where is this traffic and where are you talking to them? Traffic you own or traffic you don't. Traffic you own means people within your own Facebook group, right? That's your community. You say what happens there. You can present offers. You could pitch. You can do whatever you want in your own group. What you can't do in other people's groups, right? You can't solicit. You can't prospect. There's a lot of restrictions. There's ways around that, which we teach, but in the fine print, there are those restrictions there. Another thing with, traffic you own is your list, email, reaching out to people that way, email and messenger. So what I'll say is like that eco framework, engage, assess, assign, call to action, obligation, like that framework will still work in email capacity and a structure. Traffic you control. Also, whoever follows you or is friends with you on your social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever platforms you guys are on, but within your page and people that follow you and make a connection and become friends, that's also traffic you can control. So the way you speak to those audiences is a little different. And the audiences you control, you're always bringing them up the awareness level stage. And we have trainings on that too, right? How to speak to people based on their awareness and sophistication levels. So that's again important. And that stuff all ties back into a degree, but really understanding the human psychology, right? What I would say are the key factors that I would take away from here is, the human psychology aspect is always going to be one of those X factors as to be here, as to the skills and concepts you need to understand and comprehend to be great in Messenger. And what I talked about there, if you jumped on late or or you missed the first section there, is when it comes to that strategy, right? You want to think about your objective, the approach you're using. Always differentiate in your head, even before you get down to send out your messages. Is this cold or warm traffic? Is this someone I've already associated with and built up some rapport, or is this like a first time outreach ever? It's going to be a little different approach. And the objective could very well be the same, to book a call, right? Or to get them in my community or whatever, but the approach can vary. So strategy comes down to approach. And what we always want to be doing when it comes to, again, be there, right? Strategies and skills, be under number one. Strategies and skills that I need to have is, we want to be coming from a place of service. We want to be solving these problems and selling via solutions to help them achieve desire, goal, right? To help them overcome obstacle, to help them alleviate pain point, to get rid of or severely reduce a pain in their lives, a pain point, right? The assessment phase is what we went over the most here, and that's going to be basically the crux of the body of the messenger convo. Again, we don't want to interview and interrogate them. We want to ask questions, with a purpose to get a response of some kind of substance, not just simple one-word answers. We want to keep them engaged, and we want to gather the data we need to know if we can help them most. And then the assess section, right? We're going to inject a knowledge gap, an unexpected solution in that's going to give their brain a little zap, and they're going to make shit. That probably would work. Like, I want to find out more information about them, keeps them engaged. And then keep in mind the calls to actions that you may or may not use. It's good to have multiple. It's good to have at least two. You should always have one for that prospect that's ready to like book a call today, and that prospect that needs to be nurtured a little bit. And then we can expand and talk about more from there. But at least having those two. So having all of those concepts and understanding that conversational flow. And again, be very relational, and always think to yourself, if you were on the other side getting that message, would you reply? Would it intrigue or engage you? Or would you just ghost that person? Because if you think you would just ghost them, then what's the use of you sending it to somebody? Your prospects are usually, I'm not going to say they're like, they think exactly like you, but usually have some commonalities with your ideal audience. It's just why you're in the niche you're in and why you help who you do. Usually there's some commonalities, there's some passion correlation, right? You both have a passion for fitness or for business or for helping others or for mindset, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. So, utilize what you can have in what you have similar passions and commonalities for to build rapport, but keep it very relational and come out of a place of, the one other thing I didn't say here that I've said to plenty of clients, and the way I rewired myself to think when I got really effective is like, how would I reply to a buddy in Messenger? Let's just say we're talking to a prospect that said, hey man, I would love some help with this in a Facebook group. And you said, cool, I'll DM you. And you start it that way, right? How would I talk to a friend from 20 years ago that I graduated high school with that was asking me for some business, consulting or advice? How would I talk to that person? Well, that's how I want to talk to my prospects. Friendly, relational, how I would really help. Like a friend I graduated high school with that I was buddies with for 20 years, I'm not going to BS and I'm not going to give him fluff. I'm going to be like, hey man, what I would do if I was you is first, make sure my offer is dialed in, make sure my messaging is dialed in. Then let's talk about how you're prospecting, how you're getting in front of people. And let's look at that. And we'll start there. And the guy would be like, oh, thanks. Like, that's exactly what I need, right? Because It was a buddy of mine. I came from a place of service. I'm just trying to help him. I'm not trying to make a sale. And that's what we should be doing initially, is just trying to help, offer value, build up that trust. And from there, the sales come. Like, they're a byproduct of doing all these first steps right. So, hopefully you guys got some value and learned some new things. But I have been really, really effective in Messenger. I wish I had a little more time where I could dive into some of my Messenger convos. I know our private clients love those Teaching Tuesday sessions where I've dove into like 13 past conversations, how I showed them they all led to call bookings. Maybe on another session we can run through those examples. That doesn't happen in 5 minutes, and I've already gone over, so I'm not going to do that today. But plenty of people will probably comment in the live stream here in the comments, if they are current clients, that they've seen those conversations. I even have this one little section on flipping the script, which I call it. It's just like how to change somebody that prospected you and did cold outreach and was like, you could tell right off the bat their first message was scripted. It was BS. It was kind of like standoffish, kind of like off-putting, right? And it was kind of like cringeworthy. And I take that person who's trying to pitch me and prospect me and ultimately flip him to booking a call with me because I offer him value. And I have some screenshots on how I've done that. And that's kind of funny. That's not necessarily systematic. That's more skill set. And again, to reiterate, the most important aspect of this is skills versus systems. Some of this is skill set, and a lot of this is, and you need to get reps and you need to get comfortable with it. But once you do, you're going to understand what points you're saying repeatedly, what points are really speaking to your target audience. And then you could go back, into that eco board I had showed you, and you can basically start to map out scripts for that assessment phase. Hey, this is where most people go wrong. Symptom level problem. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. Again, so many tabs open. It's this one. Yeah, I was on that before. So then, once you do this a lot and you start getting good with it and booking calls, you can understand what part of the conversations and what you can script out. And again, based off of the knowledge gaps you come up with above, you guys may not have that. And I'm not saying that, in a negative way because you haven't worked with us yet, but that is a big part of it, like identifying the knowledge gaps. And based off each one of those, you bring them down and you make a script that you can use in Messenger and ultimately, replicate, duplicate, outsource, delegate, all of those things. And that can be to the point where you can ramp up your organic and take yourself out of that part of the business so you can focus more on your fulfillment or your sales calls or the other aspects of the business, that are most prevalent to take up your time. We always talk about, efficiency, being productive versus busy. There's a lot of people that are like busy all day in their business, but did they make any sales? Is there any production? Is there any new clients? Is there any new revenues? And I'm not saying money is everything in business, but let's talk about it. I mean, let's be honest. If we don't have sales, if we don't have clients, if we don't have revenues, it's not a business. You have a hobby, which maybe you get paid for on occasion if you make a sale, but you've helped a few people for free for proof of concept, which is great. I mean, I don't highly recommend it, but I get it. I get where that thought process comes from. And it's good to build up any kind of case studies and to build the confidence within that you can get results. So if you have to work with people for free to do so, by all means do it. I can show you other ways and I don't highly recommend it, but I get the thought process. Point being is make sure you can help people, have confidence that you can, and then Messenger and helping them in Messenger and helping them make an educated, responsible decision that is going to help them reach their goal becomes much easier. And when we do it coming from that place of being ethical, responsible, and really wanting to solve a problem and help them, overcome a struggle or reach a desired goal, that's what it's all about. So again, Messenger can be the most valuable skill when you can master this and get this down and feel really confident and comfortable with it. You never have to work for anyone again. It's so true. Like once I got this down, I knew I could wake up every day and book 2 to 4 calls on autopilot. And that was with 2 to 4 hours of work tops. And that was before I had a company and a team. It was me and one other guy. And I knew I could wake up every day and book 2 to 4 appointments, and a maximum of 4 hours of work organically. That would be a max. And then it becomes powerful. And when you can book that many calls every day and your close rate and your sales process is all dialed in, it just becomes a numbers game. You know how many calls you have to book to hit how many appointments to hit X revenues. And then you just make the proper adjustments and reverse engineer, and it builds out your whole business model. So it's really great. But that skill set was the X factor in me knowing I never had to work for anyone again. Once I mastered that, it was all gravy and my revenue has just gone consistently up. So hopefully this was of value. I think I dropped some things in there that you guys had not yet heard, learned, or known. And that was my goal here. All I would ask for you is to go implement. Last but not least, If you jumped on late and you're seeing this now, feel free to comment replay below. And if you would like to book a call and speak with someone on our team to see if we can help you grow your business, if we're a good fit, or we can just give you some more resources. Maybe, you wouldn't believe how many client resources we have that aren't in the guides group. There's tons of great stuff in there. I think we put like a 7K, course value in the guide section. We have all kinds of other resources and trainings and suggestions that can really help you guys in your business. So you put breakthrough in the bottom, get on a breakthrough call with our team member, and help us help you set out the strategy and blueprint to help hit your goals. We'd love to do that if you guys have a desire to do so. Otherwise, just go implement this crap, start booking calls, and message me in 2 weeks and say, damn right, that works really good. I'm booking calls organically and I love it, because that's what I want to hear more than anything. Have a good night, everyone.